Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to our joint webinar together with Remerge and Adjust. The topic of the day is about giving you 3 tips and tricks on how to spend your app retargeting budget smartly. So I'm here together with Christian from Remerge.
Hello everybody.
We're going to start with a brief introduction of the companies and what we're here for, and continue directly with the 3 tips and tricks we want to present to you today. So as a start, Adjust, we are one of the main attribution providers in the market. So we were founded in 2012. The company is now about 350 employees across 15 offices. The most recent one being in Tel Aviv. We are tracking about 25,000 apps worldwide. This represents probably 1 billion plus daily active users. So we have quite a nice reach, and this is also translated into 42% of market share based on the ad spend that we're able to measure. So our core product is attribution and measurement, and obviously we are developing more and more tools for our customers around fraud prevention and campaign automation.
Yeah, maybe doing a short introduction of Remerge. Remerge has been founded in 2014. We have our headquarters here in Berlin, and we started to build the first and only platform for pure in-app retargeting built up from the ground. So we are acting as a DSP working together with Adjust on retargeting campaigns. We currently have about 100 employees spread all over the world. What started in Berlin has now spread out to offices in New York, San Francisco, also Beijing, Singapore, Tokyo, and Seoul. And we are one of the first DSPs on the market offering transparent and verifiable incrementality tracking, meaning we can give you access to any kind of data related to your retargeting activities to measure if there is a potential impact on retargeting compared to your organic traffic.
So let's start with the very basic question, and if you could explain to us exactly what is app retargeting and how you deal with it at Remerge.
Sure. In a nutshell, retargeting basically takes place in the moment that a user is engaging with an app, for instance, an e-commerce app, looking at some products, shopping around, browsing, adding stuff to the shopping cart, which they would like to purchase at a later stage, but then for some reason they're actually leaving the app. So they stop interacting with the app. And this is actually where retargeting then kicks in. In that moment that a user leaves an app, retargeting takes over, and we try to re-engage that user with creatives and advertisement which are tailored and personalized to the demands of the particular user. So in this example here, we have an e-commerce app where a user browsed at a certain product but never ever did the purchase. So retargeting actually is taking over. We are trying to find that user again in the ecosystem. And once we are able to detect that user and can show in creative to that user, we typically show personalized banners, which actually, for instance, could show the product that the user showed interest in previously. And hopefully then the user is actually clicking on that creative. It leads them directly back into the app to that certain product and makes them actually do the purchase of that particular product.
Okay, so this brings me to actually our first tip and trick. This is something that we hear obviously since iOS 9 and even more since iOS 10, as it became really part of the iOS ecosystem. So this is the universal link. I believe there are a lot of prerequisites when it comes to retargeting campaigns, specifically for iOS. So we will dig deeper into the universal link. And if you could tell us a bit more how you deal with it at Remerge, that'd be great.
Sure. In general, universal links at Remerge are hot topics since the beginning. They have been introduced a couple of years ago. Since iOS 9, they exist. Since iOS 10, they actually became mandatory to use for properly deep linking into an app. And what it does in a nutshell, it is a unified approach from Apple introduced into the iOS ecosystem to have one link for a user to either provide a seamless experience to directly drive the user back into an app, or if the app is not there for some reason, to actually redirect into the mobile web space, for instance. So that we have in the end a guaranteed user experience. So whenever a user clicks on a link, it doesn't matter if that app is there, yes or no, it always leads to something for the user. The interesting thing is from the flow is that the app is actually detecting, the universal link is actually detecting if the app is still installed. If it is there, it directly leads you to a certain page within the app, which is shown on the upper right corner. Or in case the app is not installed anymore, universal link has the capabilities to either fall back into a mobile solution, which is quite common in the e-commerce and travel space, but also in case of gaming, where you sometimes don't have a proper mobile solution available, you can also fall back into the App Store and then drive a reinstall. The good thing here is that all this is actually happening automatically, so a user doesn't need to do anything here. In that moment that the universal link is clicked, the redirection is done automatically and the app is open seamlessly without any kind of user interaction needed. This, in the end, can actually lead to an increased app engagement with your clients by using the universal links.
Okay, so conclusion is app developers, before running app retargeting, have to be implementing the universal link within their iOS app.
That is a very good point. Indeed, we are actually requesting this from each and every client to have universal link set up, because that is a thing that has been dictated by the iOS ecosystem. So there is no way to opt that out. And depending also on topics that we're going to discuss after this year, we might see that it is needed to have a seamless app open experience for the user to also detect any kind of unintentional clicks from real clicks that are done by a user. What we see here on this graph is actually based on real-time postback data that we get from Adjust. So any client that is working with Adjust has the capabilities to share this postback information with your retargeting partners, so does Remerge. And what we did here basically is we were looking at the number of successful sessions or app opens after a click, and we also looked at the desired conversion events for the client. So for instance, a purchase event. And what you can see is that we had kind of a flat curve on the left-hand side of the graph, and after we implemented the universal link, or the client basically implemented the universal link, and we just set it up on our side, we could see that there was a tremendous increase in the re-engagement rate, which in the end also leads to a higher conversion rate over time. And what we typically then do, explain this to a user, is that it has a properly implemented universal link doesn't provide any possibility for a user who clicks on a link to actually opt out of that app open flow. So there is no pop-up dialog asking for confirmation. There is no redirect into the App Store. It is seamlessly leading into the app, giving the user a very good user experience, and obviously also results in an immediate session event, which you can track as a successful app open afterwards.
Yeah, I think this shows that having the ability to track the re-engagement rate is very important, like making sure that the time between the click on the ad and the next session is fully taken into account during your optimization.
Yes, we are looking in particular into the app open rates, and look also in the signals that we receive back from Adjust if an app open was successfully attributed to Remerge or not, by looking at so-called reattributions and rejected reattributions. And what we can see here is, and that is one of the services that Remerge offers, is that for our clients we provide continuous link testing. That means whenever we get a tracking link, whenever we get a universal link, which should be used for retargeting, we are monitoring the performance in terms of reattributions and rejected reattributions for each client. So what we can see here on the graph is basically the effect of implementing universal links, which lead to a better seamless experience for the user. And over time, you can see that the number of reattributions properly increase, rejections go down, because actually we make sure that the app is seamlessly opening, which in the end leads to a very short click to app open time, which is key for detecting fraudulent behavior. And so in the end results in a lower rejected reattribution ratio. So it means every click leads to a proper attributed session for the client, ultimately leading into better performance.
And that's an interesting topic. In the end, rejected reattribution and overall fraud prevention is also something that we need to take into account when it comes to re-engagement. I think a lot of app advertisers are aware that there is ad fraud ongoing on app installs, but this is also something that can happen within re-engagement. So what we at Adjust look a lot at is specifically that time between the click on the ad and the next session from the user, and understand if applying our distribution modeling, if this is part of a click spam fraud pattern or not. So this is something that we put a lot of emphasis on, and it can also either detect fraud or simply also technical problems on the publisher side. So we can give this feedback to our partners for them to optimize, as Remerge showed us there. Another topic that we are trying to push on our side and with our partners is the click validation. So we started looking at, on a daily basis, the number of clicks and advertising ID that we're receiving, and there are simply too many clicks for the number of people and devices on Earth. We know that a lot of these clicks are fraudulent, and we want to fight that by pushing this click validation. So simply, what we are asking our partners is to share impression data and link them to the clicks that they're generating for their customers. With this, it will be much more difficult for a fraudster to fake all the impressions that will lead to a click. It will just make it financially non-viable to perform fraud on Adjust clients. So this is what we want to bring, and we believe it's also going to bring much more transparency between our clients and partners, so that in the end, clients are they have more trust in partners that are able to validate their clicks and prove that they actually displayed an impression before the clicks were generated. Coming to checking these clicks, we want to also talk about this second tip and tricks. How can we make sure that we check our clicks, and how this is done on Remerge side? Could you explain us a bit more at how you're looking at reattribution signals, and how do you apply this information into your algorithm?
Mm-hmm. Of course. So first of all, Remerge does support the impression forwarding features that are required for click validation on Adjust side. So that means Remerge is able to forward each and every impression to Adjust servers to actually do a proper click validation by verifying that the necessary impressions have happened in the right time frame before the click actually was tracked. That is one of the features. The second feature that we are utilizing is, again, that we are monitoring currently all the app activities. So we are tracking for each click on an individual publisher basis, for each retargeting campaign, for each of our client individually. We are looking into the rejection ratio afterwards. So whenever Adjust basically gives us feedback that a certain click was rejected, we are currently tracking, okay, what was the responsible publisher there? And then based on a decision made for each individual client, depending on the technical setup, we draw automated conclusions to actually whitelist or blacklist a certain publisher. So what we apply at Remerge is a machine learning algorithm. The reason for that is that at the moment we observe that above roughly 6,000 new apps per day are popping up in the app stores, meaning doing this manually, checking and blacklisting and whitelisting publishers, it is almost impossible. So the machine learning algorithm actually helps us here to track and collect the data that is sent back from Adjust and monitor the performance of each individual publisher. What you can see here on the graph on the left-hand side is actually how our machine learning algorithm starts to optimize after a certain amount of time. The baseline for that is actually that we need to collect as much data as possible. On average, it takes Remerge 7 days to have a fully optimized algorithm set up for each individual publisher, leading in the end to a lower spend on these publishers. So if we notice that a publisher over time is not performing in terms of there's no proper app opens attributed to Remerge, there's no post-click conversions attributed to Remerge, that we start actually blacklisting and limiting the bidding behavior on these publishers, ultimately completely stopping bidding on these publishers. which basically resides in a better distribution of the marketing budget by focusing on publishers that perform well and are not considered as fraudulent. On the other hand side of things, so if we on the one hand side limiting the budget spend and focus on publishers that perform well, in the moment that we focus on publishers that do a good reattribution, we can also optimize the marketing spend by the client by focusing our bidding behavior and bidding strategies on these kind of publishers. So typically, as a side effect of blacklisting the fraudulent publishers, you can also see a positive impact on the good performing publishers, which is shown here on the graph. So at the same time frame where we started blacklisting the fraudulent publishers, you can see that in overall, using the same budget pacing as before, we generate a higher ratio of reattributions because we are focusing the money spent on these good performing publishers. This in the end obviously also leads to a higher conversion rate for the client, and it makes it easier for us to achieve the client KPIs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point on that side, to continuously optimize the publishers on which you buy your traffic from, knowing that you guys buy everything through real-time bidding, through exchanges, and this environment, even though you have full control on where this is displayed, you always have, as an exchange, more and more apps that are going into the pool, and you as a buyer, and you are probably one of the biggest buyer for most of this exchange, you want to make sure that you're buying on the right placements.
Exactly.
So going to the last tip and trick, there is no re-engagement campaigns without specifically targeting an audience. So I think what we could hear from you also is a couple of examples on how you experimented using specific audiences. So we're going to mention the audience builder. The audience builder is also an Adjust product, which allow our customers to segment their user data. So they are tracking events with Adjust. They are tracking several activities according to their user funnel. They will also want to create segments, buckets of users that have specific attributes. And what we allow is from these segments, customers are able to slice and dice the data with the attributes they want, and also share these with the partners of their choice in order to create several segments and see how each of these segments behave after re-engagement is performed. So we're going to enter a case study that Remerge applied on it with a food delivery app.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, we had a question a couple of months ago from one of our clients about, can we actually measure the performance of people based on the origin of the install? So they were in particular interested into a scenario to analyze, okay, how do people behave that have organically installed the app versus people that have recently deinstalled the app, for instance, or people that have not any interest anymore in actually using the app, so they have completely uninstalled the app. And obviously we can do a lot of segmentation based on in-app events. In that particular case, we were relying on the audience builder setup because it was the easiest for the client to set it up, and also Remerge has a good technical integration in automatically consuming these audience builder lists for our targeting purposes. So the setup was pretty straightforward here. In the end, we had two audiences defined on the Adjust side, which were consumed by us. One audience was basically defining uninstallers, people that have recently deinstalled the app, or people that have reinstalled the app. And then we also compared this with users that organically installing the app. And here we basically, what we did is, because we wanted to make sure that there is no bidding algorithm tampering with the bidding behavior or evaluating the data in the wrong way, but we said, okay, we are mixing all these audiences into one retargeting campaign to make sure that the condition and the algorithm is behaving exactly the same for all these users. And then internally we could do a flagging of, okay, each user belonged to a certain segment, and then we could use the real-time reporting that we offer to actually monitor the performance of these different segments. That was basically the setup. It was running for a couple of weeks, and we had some very good results on the different segments here. So what you can see is basically is that we had in total for the test phase about 13,000 clicks. and we looked at the performance. Okay, how many clicks were actually driven by people that have organically installed, so have just the app currently on their phone, and we looked how many people actually have clicked that recently reinstalled the app. And we also looked at the number of clicks that were generated by people that have uninstalled the app. And we see here at the moment that there's about 77% of the total ad spend for these clicks was actually spent by the installers campaigns, while the uninstaller took up 21% of the overall ad spend. So there was quite an amount of spend going into these kind of user segments that have recently uninstalled the app. The next thing that we actually looked at is what is happening after the click. So the click is one thing, but obviously we also need to see, are we able to bring these users back into the app? And here we could again see that especially the people that have uninstalled the app, even they might click on the app, it seems like they're not willing to afterwards reinstall the app. So we saw only a percentage of 2% of people that have uninstalled the app coming in the end back into the app. And this was also reflected then into post-click conversions. So it was not only interesting for the client to see how many people we can actually re-engage and bring back to the app. No, they also wanted to see how many in-app purchases were actually driven afterwards. So in that particular case, food delivery, obviously it was food ordering. So they also looked at, okay, what happens after the app open? And what we could see, and which is shown here on this table on the upper area, is that we have a very high conversion rate of 1% for the reinstallers and 2.5% for the reinstallers. But obviously the uninstallers, they drove a lot of clicks, basically generated a lot of costs for our clients, but in the end the number of re-engagements was extremely low, and even the conversion rate was the worst one of all the three segments that we actually compared.
I think that's a pretty interesting use case in this food delivery case, because from a marketer perspective, when you are re-engaging people who reinstall the app, I mean, I'm not so surprised that the number of the conversion rate is in the end slightly higher, even though we could have more volume, because in the end these reinstallers, they uninstall the app maybe for a reason, for seasonality or whatsoever, but they reinstalled it knowing already the user experience that that app had, which probably explains also why you see such performance.
Yes,
I think that's an interesting case for food delivery, but it can be expanded at all sort of app verticals. And I think each marketer within their vertical could benefit from doing such tests and understanding exactly how each of the segments from installers, reinstallers, and uninstallers are performing afterwards, and changing the messaging, changing the creative, and really digging to the why and push their users down the funnel.
Exactly. So one of the outcomes of this case study in the end was that we concluded together with the client that we should focus all our marketing activities actually on the organic installers and the reinstallers, and try to avoid targeting uninstallers, because they're actually eating up the budget and the overall resulting into a negative impact on the overall client KPI. So that was one of the conclusions here, that we said, okay, we are able to actually make it transparent how is the performance of the different segments based on the audience builder list. And this was in the end leading to an optimized campaign setup, where we agreed with the client, okay, it doesn't make much sense in the way how we do the marketing activities at the moment to target the uninstallers. As you just said, in this particular case, there are two options. Either we completely ignore these users and don't target them at all, or really think together with the client about an alternative marketing strategy, how you reach these uninstallers. And that was one of the cases where we used the audience builder in a very simple fashion to get this results pretty fast. So in general, maybe to conclude that from a Remerge perspective, is that talking about the three tips, we can take definitely one of the things you should remember is that universal links is a must nowadays on iOS. It is important to provide a seamless user experience, no pop-up dialogues, no redirects to App Store, so that the user actually has no chance to opt out. So that is already very good. Plus, it directly resonates with any kind of fraud detection utilized by Adjust, for instance, to make sure that every click leads to a legitimate session event afterwards. So both things work quite well in conjunction. On the check your clicks topic, what we said here is also there is a tremendous amount of new apps popping up every day. So of course there's a lot of fraudulent traffic in there, and really measuring the post-click behavior is important to actually make sure that you optimize the campaign spend and focusing really on the publishers that perform well. So here again, choose a partner who's measuring what happens after the click, is detecting, okay, this is not a legitimate click, and that also can utilize this information to optimize your campaigns automatically. For know your audience, of course, we always want to have as big as segments as possible. We want to reach as many people as possible, but in general in marketing, you always need to think about, okay, what is the right messaging for a certain segment? So an audience builder list was here a very good approach for us to easily make segmentation. The client could easily follow how the segmentation works exactly. And we had a very clean setup on the campaign configuration to make sure, okay, this is where the uninstallers go, this is where the organic installers go. And then it was easy for us to measure and report back the performance, even in Adjust for each individual client, to really show, look, this is the outcome, you can verify it in your Adjust dashboard.
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for these tips. I think it just shows to our customers that there is obviously work before the campaigns are even running, making sure that the setup is right, universal link setup, and you maximize your chance of leading your re-engaged users within the app. There is also work to do during your campaigns on the ongoing optimization that is happening, checking your clicks, making sure that nothing is wrong on the publisher environment, on the exchange that you buy from, and I think your approach is really good on that front. And on the post campaign, or let's say the optimization side, and moving forward, I think clients should keep experimenting on each of their user segment, making sure that they test different cases, different creatives, and different overall scenarios that would push every single of their user segments, however they segment and decide to segment them, down the funnel, and in order to reach their business KPIs. So this concludes our webinar. If you guys have any questions and you want to reach out for any specific information, here are our contact information. So don't hesitate. Thank you.